Today's topic might be somewhat taboo or uncomfortable, but I want you to hear all of the information I have, and hopefully your opinion will change or you will learn something new. Today I'm going to be talking to you about euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide. On euthanasia.procon.org, it states that the proponents of euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide coin that terminally ill people should have the right to end their suffering with a quick, dignified, and compassionate death. All of us either know someone or know of someone who has suffered and passed away from a painful illness. None of us would want a terminally ill loved one to spend their final days of life in pain or in the hospital, hooked up to machines and barely clinging to life. So, physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia is an option for those who want to die with dignity and in control of their final days. It is important to understand the reasoning behind physician-assisted suicide and why people are turning to it. I want each of you to put aside your personal opinions or stigmas and hear some of the facts. First, I'm going to be covering 3 points. The reasoning behind physician-assisted suicide, the different methods of physician-assisted suicide, and lastly, what we can do to better understand it. First, I would like to talk about the reasons why people choose physician-assisted suicide. So what exactly is euthanasia? It is defined from the Oxford English Dictionary as a gentle and easy death, or the means of bringing about a gentle or easy death. Many people who suffer from terminal illness are turning to physician-assisted suicide more than ever, and it is becoming a legal practice in more and more areas. Physician-assisted suicide refers to the practice where a physician provides a potentially lethal medication to a terminally ill patient at their request that they can take at the time of their choosing to end their life, as defined by the HastingsCenter.org. Only those who are terminally ill are eligible for physician-assisted suicide, so only those who are guaranteed to die within 6 months with no other options could be eligible. Patients who also always have a choice whether or not they want to take the medication at their set time. In the end, it is all left up to the patient. There are many different factors at play when one is choosing to go through with physician-assisted suicide. Many patients do not wish for their family or friends to see them suffer during their final days. Patients also feel a sense of control with this method, seeing as they have no control over the disease that is killing them. Or for some, they have extremely negative side effects to the medication that they're already on. Large amounts of medical costs also play a role in patients' decisions. Patients view it as a more affordable option since they are already diagnosed as terminally ill. Patients have their time to get their financial affairs and personal affairs in order, and the medication for the lethal dose is much less expensive than drugs that won't actually prolong the life of the patient. Patients that choose physician-assisted suicide tend to feel more control over the remainder of their lives. Patient diagnoses and life expectancies vary for each individual, so physician-assisted suicide allows the patient to feel like they have a say on what is going on in their lives since the terminal illness does not. Patients have time to focus on things that are the most important to them, like spending time with their friends and family. Patients can make sure they spend time doing the things that count instead of suffering. It can also take some of the fear out of the situation, letting the patient cope with death before the time comes. Now that you've heard about some of the reasons why people turn to physician-assisted suicide, I want to talk about patient eligibility requirements and the different methods. One of the most important things to understand about physician-assisted suicide is that a patient must be in good standing mental health for this procedure. Before someone can be eligible for a physician-assisted death, one is required to take various psychological assessments to ensure the mental health and stability of the patient. The death by dignity laws allow qualified terminally ill adults to voluntarily request and receive a prescription medication to hasten their death. As of February 20th, 2017, California, Colorado, District of Columbia, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington have death with dignity statutes as reported by deathwithdignity.org. There are several steps in acquiring eligibility for the medication to end one's life. The patient must be a resident of California, Colorado, District of Columbia, Oregon, Vermont, or Washington. Patients must also be 18 years of age or older, mentally competent, and of course diagnosed with a terminal illness that will, within reasonable medical judgment, lead to death within 6 months. There are several different methods of physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia. Voluntary active euthanasia, defined by the Stanford Encyclopedia, says those instances of euthanasia in which a clearly competent person makes a voluntary and enduring request to be helped to die. Passive euthanasia, defined by medicaldictionary.com, is the ending of life by the deliberate withholding of drugs or other life-sustaining treatment. And lastly, there is non-voluntary euthanasia. In non-voluntary euthanasia, the person is unable to make the decision for themselves. They could be in a coma, an infant, mentally challenged, or severely brain damaged. So the decision to end their life must be made for them. Now we're going to talk about what we can do to better understand euthanasia. We may not understand why someone would choose to end their life, but to a terminally ill individual, the decision can be quite simple. Some may have moral or religious differences about physician-assisted suicide. Someone with strong religious values could say that physician-assisted suicide is a sin or playing God, but it is important to look at the things through the patient's point of view. Usually when a patient is requesting physician-assisted suicide, they have already accepted the fact that they are going to die, and they truly believe that it is the best option for them. Physician-assisted suicide allows a person to die with dignity, and for some, dying without the pain and suffering of a terminal illness is the most important part. Patients do not wish to die in a hospital hooked up to machines and wires, their quality of life already gone. Some people also find comfort in spirituality through physician-assisted suicide, strengthening or finding a relationship with God. There are many different websites and organizations out there that have vast amounts of information on physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia. It is, of course, very important to do some research on physician-assisted suicide and understand it is not such a black or white topic. Laws like Die with Dignity gives people the right to die on their own terms. On deathwithdignity.org, it states terminally ill patients, not government and its interference, politicians and their ideology, or religious leaders who should make their end-of-life decisions and determine how much pain and suffering they should endure. The Die with Dignity laws so far are only in a few states, but it is important to bring it to the attention of your state's representatives and start the conversation about bringing the choice to your state. Reading personal stories and testimonials of families that have gone through or are currently going through terminal illness can be a better way to understand how people cope with death and why they have chosen this path. Now, after hearing all the information I have provided, I have one final request. I want everyone to put aside their personal opinions or stigmas and put yourself in the shoes of a terminally ill individual. Empathize and understand that while it is a taboo decision, it is still a basic human right. More and more people are turning to physician-assisted suicide more than ever, so it is becoming more popular. Thinking of the patient's wishes is the most important thing to remember. I want to finish up by leaving you all with these thoughts. Today I covered 3 points: the reasoning behind physician-assisted suicide, the different kinds of euthanasia, and what we can do to better understand it. Euthanasia, when decided in the right state of mind in terminally ill patients, is extremely important in their final days. Once again, I want everyone to put yourself in the shoes of those who are terminally ill. Imagine knowing your life is fastly ending, but you had the option to die the way you wanted to. Physician-assisted suicide is a basic human right for the terminally ill, and everyone should consider supporting the cause. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, that took forever.